Video number 6. The Earth used to have a canopy of water overhead, or ice. This would make the Earth like a big greenhouse. How many know what a greenhouse is? They've got all glass walls you have to dress in the basement in a greenhouse. Carl Ball's book, Panorama of Creation, I think is really good on that topic. You know, a lot of scientists are still finding water in space between the stars. I think there used to be a lot of water above the atmosphere. And scientists have a new theory now about the dinosaurs. They say maybe a lack of oxygen killed the dinosaurs. A lack of oxygen. Why would they say that? Well, because when they studied the Apatosaurus, they found out his lungs are way too small compared to the size of his body, and his nostrils are too small. An 80-foot Apatosaurus had nostrils the same size as a horse. Now, how is an 80-foot animal going to get enough air through nostrils the same size as a horse? He'd be sucking so hard trying to get a breath, it'd set him on fire from the friction, from the wind whistling in there. They couldn't breathe. Well, you know, apparently dinosaurs did breathe because we find bones of them all over the world. Dinosaurs did live. There's no question about did they live. The question is, when did they live and how did they breathe? Their lungs are too small. Their nostrils are too small. That's a simple scientific fact. So we have to come up with an answer to explain the dinosaurs. Well, when you look in amber, which is petrified tree sap, occasionally in amber they find mosquitoes or something. How many saw the movie Jurassic Park, you know, where they drilled in to get the mosquito blood out of the amber? Well, sometimes in amber they find air bubbles. The air bubbles often have 50% more oxygen than we do today. The air you're breathing is 21% oxygen. The air in the amber bubbles is 32% oxygen. I think before the flood came, this canopy of water or ice would increase air pressure, probably to double what it is today. Have you ever gone up or down a hill, you know, and you hear your ears pop from the air pressure change? When I climbed Mount Rainier, I got up around 12,000 foot. I've been at sea level for years now. Here I am at 12,000 foot. I thought, where's all the air up here? I was having to take 2 breaths in order to take 1 step. I go, it's real thin up there. Well, if you doubled the air pressure, breathing would be easier. And if you increase the oxygen content, that greatly helps again. I think the pre-flood world probably had greater air pressure and increased oxygen. Now, what happens under those conditions? Not only does your hemoglobin in your bloodstream take on oxygen, your plasma will get oxygen saturated, which means you could run for hundreds of miles without getting tired. Adam and Eve didn't need a car. They could run to Grandma's. Only they didn't have a grandma. Or a mother-in-law, by the way. That's why it was paradise. No. Actually, my wife had a great mother-in-law. I think, though, before the flood came, things were a lot different. That increased air pressure would sure make you heal up faster. How many of you remember baby Jessica that fell into the well in Texas? She was 18 months old. Her left leg slipped down in a pipe. Her right leg came up behind her, and she slid down 20 feet inside an 8-inch steel pipe. She was down there for 2.5 days. They tore up the neighborhood getting that kid out of that well. I mean, it was an amazing rescue. Got to really praise those guys for the work they did. When they got her out, lots of her body had turned black from lack of circulation. Her right leg was totally black. It had been twisted around behind her, stuck in her face from behind for 2.5 days. One doctor said, we got to cut her right leg off immediately. The other doctor said, hey, before we start cutting stuff off, let's put her in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. They stuck Jessica in a chamber, filled it up full of pure oxygen, and pumped it up to double normal pressure. Within a few hours, her leg turned pink. They restored circulation. They had to cut off half of her little toe. It never did save that one, but still, it beats losing a leg. By the way, do you know what you call a girl if one leg is shorter than the other? Eileen. Never mind. A little bit of trivia there. Jessica was absolutely fine after being treated with hyperbaric treatments. They restored circulation. Interesting. The largest chamber in America is in Pensacola, Florida. It can hold 30 people in an emergency. What's that? What would they have a hyperbaric chamber for? In West Germany, they're treating all stroke patients with hyperbaric oxygen and getting amazing recovery from strokes. In England, they're treating multiple sclerosis. In India, they're treating leprosy. with hyperbaric treatments. Here's a kid being treated for cerebral palsy. They're finding now if they give people more oxygen during surgery, only half as many get nauseated and only half as many have infections afterwards. This chamber in New York is being used to treat people with neurological disorders like autism with hyperbaric oxygen. They have many one-person chambers in the world today. The Dallas Cowboys have a hyperbaric chamber. Now question, why would the Dallas Cowboys want a hyperbaric chamber? Well, they've discovered their injured players will heal twice as fast. And if you're paying the guy $1,000 a minute to go play with a ball, you want him out there playing with the ball, not sitting on the sideline, right? I think the whole world probably had hyperbaric conditions before the flood came. You can get your own hyperbaric sleeping bag if you want. Michael Jackson has one. He says it's going to make them live forever. Well, that's just what we need, you know. Here's my son, Kenandu, back there on the camera, and his wife and I at an oxygen bar in Alaska. You go in to eat lunch and you pay $5 and you breathe pure oxygen while you're eating. After about 15 minutes of breathing pure oxygen, now it's not under pressure, but still, you're breathing pure oxygen. You walk away saying, wow, let's get back to work. Let's go shop some more, you know, which is probably the hidden agenda. A friend of mine in Oregon has his own hyperbaric chamber. It cost $250,000. He let me go in it for 6 times. They call it a dive. You sit in there, they close the door, and they pressurize it. I got up to triple atmospheric pressure. After about an hour in there, all your plasma is saturated with oxygen. I got out. I felt like running around the world. I couldn't believe it. Felt like I was 19 years old again. Like, man, let's go jog someplace. You know? It's incredible, the energy level. Dr. Mori, Ki Mori in Tokyo, Keio University in Tokyo, started raising a tomato plant under pressurized carbon dioxide, so I've heard, and filtered sunlight. He blocked out the UV light. His tomato plant grew a little faster than normal, and it kept growing and growing and growing, and they said, wow, this thing's getting bigger. After 2 years, it had produced 900 tomatoes and was 16 feet tall. They moved it to a shopping center, built scaffolding to hold up the branches, and it kept growing and growing. They took it to Expo 85 and said, this plant might produce 10,000 tomatoes. It ended up growing 40 feet tall, producing 15,000 tomatoes in its lifetime. One tomato plant. That's a tomato tree. Now this was a cherry tomato plant. You know, the little cherry tomatoes you put on your salad. But his tomatoes were coming off baseball size. Can you imagine if the whole world had hyperbaric conditions like that before the flood came? The plants would grow like crazy. You would need the dinosaurs just to mow the grass.